Hi, I'm Paul Germain, and welcome to another session of Smart Boating. As you know, if you watched the show before, we cover a wide variety of topics, from docking to navigation. And the general idea is to provide you with some information that will help you make better decisions and have more fun on the water. And every now and then we take a little side trip. And I think you'll find this one today particularly interesting. It's on PT boats. And we're talking here with a very knowledgeable guy in that area. His name is Frank Andrus Sr., and he's the owner of the Mosquito Fleet exhibit. Welcome, Frank.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you for having me this morning.
Great to have you. Frank, we've got a really cool show here today. But before we get into it, can you share with people a little bit about your background in boating and, more importantly, your background with PT boats?
Well, my background with the PT boats got started back in 1967, watching the movie PT 109. That started my path and my journey. And then, of course, from there, I ended up meeting so many veterans over the years that I actually opened up the Mosquito Fleet exhibit, which deals with hundreds of rare artifacts from the PT boat service. And I have traveled all over New England, putting up and doing exhibits. And I have authored 3 books on PT boats as well.
Really? Wow. You're really an expert in this area.
Well, I've been doing it an awful long time, since I was 10 years old, and next week I'll be 64. So
Quite a long time. Well, you get just the right experience for this particular show. So let's get right into it. It's a big topic, of course, as you know, from studying it for so long. We can't cover it all, but I thought we could cover some of the highlights. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of the photos we put together queued up. And I'd like you, if you could, while I'm doing that, if you could help people understand, what were PT boats and what were they designed to do?
Well, PT boats were, first of all, you have to stop and realize that the United States Navy began to look into the study of the PT boat. And the PT boats were basically made for one thing, and that was to operate in shallow waters and to use torpedoes against capital ships and to stop the enemy from using different shipping lanes. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they did.
Okay.
Here, of course, you see a beautiful picture of the Huckins boat.
Yeah.
Here, which is actually in Hawaiian waters right there when that picture was taken.
Okay. There were actually 3 manufacturers, right? Huckins was one of them.
Yeah, this is Huckins. The next one would have been Higgins Industries, which you see here, mm-hmm. out of New Orleans. And the boat that we're going to be talking about today, which is the Elco PT boat, located in Bayonne, New Jersey, at the Elco Naval Division.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Elco, when they got involved with making the PT boats, they weren't new to the topic of boat building, were they?
Well, the thing about it is that Elco itself was founded in 1892. Mm-hmm. And they actually launched their first boat in that same year. They built Coast Guard lifeboats. They did electric launches, but I think their biggest feat was they came up with sub chasers during the First World War, which were designed by Irwin Chase, who was the chief designer at Elco. Here we see a typical 80-footer. Mm-hmm. The sub chaser that you see here is an 80-footer. They were capable of doing at least 20 knots. They were built in 488 days. They built 720 of these sub chasers for Britain to use against the German submarines. And these little boats attacked German submarines using paravanes, and then later they would use depth charges.
Oh, what's a paravane?
Well, that's something that they drag behind the boat, mm-hmm. Which would pick them up, and they could detect them that way, and then they could destroy them.
Oh, I see. And you said this was how many foot? 80 foot?
This is an 80-foot all wooden boat.
All wooden, yeah.
All wooden.
Single plank?
I'm sorry?
Were they single plank, double plank? Do you know?
These here were built. Yeah, these were built. These were double plank mahogany hulls.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So what was great about this is that Elco, by doing this, they pioneered mass construction of boats.
Yes.
Which is very good. And this is important because, the United States Navy at the time, Paul, they wanted to look into the study of the motor torpedo boats to see if they had any value to the Navy. Mm-hmm. And reports indicated that these small boats should be looked into. And the Navy decided to have a competition for small boats. And Elco decided that with their hull experience and undergoing of high-speed engines in relations to the boats, they took a gamble on that. So it was back in 1939 that chief designer Irwin Chase and the executive vice president of Elco, Henry Sutphin, gambled and started to check out the Scott Payne 70-foot boat to take a peek at it and see if it's something that they could use to enter into the design contest.
Right. We've got some neat photos of that, Frank. But before that, let's show people a quick clip of what a PT boat looks like underway here. So this is very short, 10 seconds, but it gives people a good representation of what they look like.
Yeah, it does. This is a nice picture of an Elco later war boat and operating in the Pacific. You know, she's just a fantastic looking boat and carried an awful lot of firepower.
I bet it did. Yeah. Okay. So this is the boat that you're talking about now, the British-based Scott Payne design.
Yeah, this is the Scott Payne boat, and the boat that you see here is how she looked when she came from England.
Okay.
The boat here is operating in New London. She is a 70-foot boat. At this point, she's carrying 3 Rolls-Royce engines.
Okay.
And she carries 4 18-inch torpedoes. And also you see in these turrets here, they were powered Dewandrae turrets that they called. And they had double 30 caliber machine guns inside of them. They had a low silhouette, these boats did.
Yes.
Made from many different types of wood. They had an average speed of about 42 knots.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really going. So you said they had the Rolls-Royce Merlins in them. How many horsepower apiece?
They were 1,100 horsepower apiece at the time, Paul.
Okay.
And of course, you know, after when Elco would get involved with making their own 70-foot boats, they changed and went with the Packard engines and disregarded the Merlins.
Okay.
You know, another beautiful shot of, you know, a portside shot of the 70-footer, and just an absolute wonderful boat. Great handling boat. And this boat would be the design that Elco would go by. They would go by this in making their own first assembled 70-footers, which now here, of course, we're looking at PT9. This was also in New London, Paul. The boat was brought over to the Electric Boat Company, the submarine base at the time. They repainted the boat in navy gray tones and added the PT9 to the hull. Yeah. And then, of course, from there, they would head over to Elco. And one thing I just wanted to make clear to your viewers is that when they bought this boat from England, not many blueprints, they didn't have many blueprints. So the Elco engineers actually had to take this boat, bring it over to the building, disassemble it, and remake all of the different blueprints that they needed with the changes that they needed for their own PT boats when they came out with PT 10 through 19.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big project.
Yeah, huge project. One that would be substantially good for them, though, because it would show that they had their own foresight and engineering department to handle just about any problem or any type of changes that they needed.
Yeah. And this design, like saying low silhouette, pretty lightweight for its size, I guess, right?
Yeah, lightweight with the 4 torpedoes on. There's not many guns, like I say, the Dewandrae turrets. Yeah. These boats, again, roughly probably 30 to 35 tons at the time, which is back then, that was not an awful lot of weight. And the boats, as you can see, would plane out of the water and they would move very quickly, as I mentioned before, 42 knots.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think we're going to see, correct me if I'm wrong here, Frank, a progression of the torpedoes. These torpedoes this boat's carrying are a little smaller in diameter than some of the ones in later years, right?
Yeah, these are 18-inch torpedoes, and you know, they would eventually change these to the 21-inch torpedo.
Okay, all right. And did they have a certain type of charge with them that maybe changed over the years?
Well, they did. These are tube fired torpedoes where they had a black powder charge in the rear of them. They were greased so that the torpedo could slide out easily. They were electronically fired from the cockpit and then slid out of the torpedo towards their targets.
Okay, all right. Now here's an interesting picture of the helm. Pretty compact space right in there.
Yeah, this is again PT9. You know, this shot was actually taken while the boat was brought into Elko, where they were starting to take things apart and do their own blueprints. And as you can see, there's not much room for people in that helm area. And when Elko redesigned this, they certainly made a larger space for their sailors and officers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is just a beautiful photograph. This is the first of the Elko assembled 70 footers. And as you can see, they've redesigned the cabin structure, making it larger. And at this time right now, she has the 3 Packard engines and she's carrying 21-inch torpedoes. At this point, like I say, she's got the W8 Packard Marine engines inside, and she's ready to go. She's ready to go. Yeah. Here. Yeah. Go ahead.
Ask you, Frank, what sort of crew would typically be on a boat like this?
Well, this is a small 70-foot boat, so you probably had a crew between 8 and 10 men.
8 and 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this is after it's recently launched, and they're getting ready to move it to the next stage, type thing.
Yeah, they put this boat in the water, and she's been to the left is the outdoor boat shed. So she's leaving from there with Elko workers on board, and she's heading out to begin some of her testing.
Mm-hmm.
And here we see her in all her glory, beautiful portside shot. This boat is probably traveling at about 35 knots right now or so, building up speed. And you can see the incredible wake that those Packard engines would make. Remember that these boats were built for speed and maneuverability.
Yeah. And
they needed that speed and maneuverability to get away.
Yeah. That, like you said, that's a beautiful photograph. And we got to really thank Erwin Chase for donating this photographs and the NRA for helping us with some of the video clips here today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Erwin Chase was the chief designer and the managing constructor at Elko. He was the brainchild behind the PT boat program.
Right.
And just a fantastic man.
Yeah, so great. Well, here's another clip we've got of a representative PT boat underway. As you can see, the speed, the rooster tail you were talking about there. This is one fast speedboat. She's and in this picture she's just cruising along, so she really has not reached her top speed. But you can see the beauty of the boat, of the Elko boat, and you can see that she's carrying radar and different types of armament. Yeah, and here's a view that's even more clear. And this is really the second phase. This is the 77-footer we're looking at? Yeah, this is the 77. And this was due to the fact, Paul, that the Navy wanted a larger boat to carry their 21-inch torpedoes. Mm-hmm. And they would come out with this design. They were awarded a contract to build 20, starting with this number 20 through 48. Okay. So they built that number of boats. And what they did on this boat compared to the 70-footer is they strengthened the hull. They made the helm a little bit larger. Mm-hmm. At this point, they came out with self-sealing fuel tanks for the boats. And they did away after with the power turrets, even though this one has it. Yeah. And they also changed these power turrets, switched over to the 50 caliber twin machine guns, whereas PT9 had the 30 caliber. Okay, so these boats would be the first boats to see combat. How about the engines, Frank? We got more boat. Did they upgrade the engines, a little more horsepower to keep them up at those same high speeds? Yeah, at this point here, this boat is probably carrying a 1,350 horsepower Packard Marine engine. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to let your viewers know that there were 3 of these engines in each boat. So there was quite a bit of horsepower to move them along in reference to the lightweight and how they were. Yeah. Well, let's take a few minutes to show people how these were built, because I think it was really interesting. And they actually started with a jig, and they started what they call turtle fashion, where they had the hull opposite of the way it would be in the water, right? Yeah, this is an inside shot of Building 21 inside the main assembly building. And as you can see, there's a jig on the floor, which set the pattern for the hull. Yep. And they use numbered frames.
which were placed on the jig, would complete the hull from bow to stern, and two men could carry the frames right to the jig. But despite their lightweight, they were just an incredibly well-built hull and very, very strong.
Yeah, it reminds me of an aircraft where they don't get the structural strength from one or two main things. They have it from a whole network of supportive points.
Yeah, there's a number of frames here, and then watertight doors would be added, and the last piece to go in would be the transom on these boats. We've
got another picture that this is the same thing. The jig's being filled out with more frames, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, this is it's starting to take shape now as they add more frames, and you can see that as they add more frames that pretty soon they'll start another phase. As we go along, we'll see the different pictures and the phases that they do. Yeah. But this is, you can really see what's happening now. Here, all of the frames have been put into the jig, and what they're doing now on the sides of the boat is they're adding these batten strips diagonally, and these batten strips would be the first layer for the mahogany planking that would be added later.
Okay. Yeah, we got more
another shot. More batten strips have been added. You can really see the integral parts of the hull here as they work on it. And when you see the hull like this, you can really get a good feeling of how strong it really was. Here is the joiner shop, Paul. This is the upper mezzanine level in building 21. The joiner shop is where they made all of the cabin structures. And you can see that in this picture. Here's a great picture of a cabin trunk structure that is being completed. Once these were completed, they were lowered down to the assembly room floor and then added to the boats.
Okay.
And, another shot here. You got two hulls side by side. Two hulls side by side. The one on the right, the frames are in the jig. And to the left, you can see that the first layers of mahogany planking are being added to the boat, to the next of it. So the hull starts to take shape as you watch. Again, an absolute beautiful shot of this hull. You really can get the feel of how strong and how beautiful it is with the double plank mahogany. She's upside down right now, and very soon they have her in the straps. She'll be turned over to start the next phase of assembly.
Now the planking, the double plank construction, Frank, did they have the planking going at different angles? In other words, did they have the first layer going like fore and aft, and then the second layer going diagonal?
Yeah, they did. They did. The first planking went on a certain way, and the second planking went on the next way. And I just want to make mention that to strengthen the hull, Paul, they actually used airplane cloth and a gluing technique, of which they would actually go through the whole hull, and they would heat it up so that the glue would impregnate the wood.
Okay. All right. So there's wood, this fabric, and then another layer of wood.
That's correct. And it made it very, very durable. Here's another nice shot. You see the two workers up on top as they start to turn the hull, to bring it to its next assembly, where they'll begin working on the deck.
Yeah, that's a big boat to turn over.
Yeah, I mean, that's 70 feet of boat right there. So it's at this point right now, it's pretty heavy. She's probably between 6 and 8 tons right there. Again, now here she is right now. The straps have turned her over. She's in her cradle. You can see the cradle on the bottom. And now she's ready for the second phase, which would be to add the decking, and then they would go from there. So it was quite a process to do each boat.
Yes.
And then again, another phase where you see the deck has been added, and the workers are all around the boat doing certain things. Tow rails have been added here. You'll see the cabin trunk structure, which is the helm area and down below area, have been added, while two workers are working in the stern of the boat, doing other things.
Yes. They use some special equipment, right?
Yeah, this is an Elco oven, and they use this for the gluing techniques that they had for the boats, to make the wood able to withstand salt, air, and the water. So laminated mahogany with a phenolic glue process help shape the frames
Mhm.
that would become the ribs in a standard molded form on the boats. And they locked together the form. Once they locked it, they would put the form in the oven, which was heated to 140 degrees, and that would make the wood and the glue one.
Okay. Okay. And this is a picture. We've got quite a few pictures here we want to move through, but quickly here, we've got some workers working on the output of that oven, right?
Yeah, they've taken this out of the oven now. They're going to take the frames off. They'll sand it out, and you can see the many layers of wood,
Yeah.
which is, you can really get the idea of how strong this technique was.
Mm-hmm. This is a shot into the engine bay, which shows just how large it is, right?
Yeah, the engine room, you can see the engine beds for the 3 engines. These workers are in there doing all of the different plumbing and electrical that needs to be done. There was an awful lot of work that needed to be done before the engines could be put in the boat.
And here, speaking of the engines, is the engine.
Yeah, I mean, the Bulldog engine, the Packard Marine engine, she was just a fantastic power plant. 3 of these go in each boat, 2,800 pounds, which was light in those days.
Right.
And she could, at her end, she could put out 1,500 horsepower a piece. Just a fantastic, it was a gasoline engine.
Mhm.
And it really did the job of moving the PT boats around. And it was a very dependable engine made by the Packard Motor Car Company in Detroit.
Yes, okay. We've just got a few more minutes, but I just wanted to call attention to the fact that women were an integral part of building these boats.
Yeah, they were. As the men went off to war, the women came in and did the job of the men. Here's one woman working on a drill press, another working on a brake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was, it was just a fantastic thing to have the women come in to replace the men.
Here
2 men working outdoors. Yeah, they're working outdoors here. Here they are doing work on more of the wood to put it together, some of the girder work, and they could do that outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Now these had carry special gas tanks because they were carrying so much fuel and they were around a lot of bullets, right?
3,000 gallons of fuel these boats carried. So there were 3 tanks of gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
And when the 77 footers come around, like we mentioned earlier, they were self-sealing gasoline tanks. So this worker is putting on the rubber on the tanks, making them self-sealing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And with those big engines, they could burn through this fuel in about 6 hours?
Oh, I mean, dependent upon the RPMs, it wouldn't take much if they were going at high speed, but they didn't use high speed much in patrols. Here, in a late war Elco boat, you'll see the center gasoline engine right here, tank, is being put in. And by the way, these tanks were all carried underneath the day room in the boat. So 3 of these, 3,000 gallons of fuel, of gasoline, that was something.
That is something, yeah.
Yes.
Let's take a look here. So we've got these big motors, triple motors, a lot of horsepower, really critical to get that alignment between the propeller and the engine correct, right?
Yeah, this is a worker. He's underneath the boat, obviously, and he's fitting out one of the bronze struts on the boat. We notice the prop shaft that it's making its way to the back of the boat. And at this stage of assembly, they'll also put the high-speed pitch props on as well.
Mm-hmm.
The wet boat basin, you could fit up to 6 boats inside of the wet boat basin. Fantastic area, which was heated in the wintertime.
Yeah.
They'd be towed in here, and they would put weapon systems in here, ammo boxes, torpedo racks, and other assemblies. And they moved them here, Paul, to get them out of Building 21 so they could keep production moving smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great shot of the Elco 77 footer. You'll notice that, I mean, if you look at it, you'll say, gee, she looks an awful lot like the 70 footer, but she's 7 feet bigger with some changes. And again, in these turrets, she's carrying the Colt 50 caliber twin machine guns and the 21-inch torpedoes.
Mm-hmm. I've got another very short clip here to show people our final one, actually, our final clip. Really
beautiful. Yeah, beautiful shot. This is a late war Elco in the Pacific with she's got a 40 millimeter Bofors cannon on her bow. A lot of changes during the war as it progressed. I'll make mention that the PT boats were a torpedo platform, but as they realized that it didn't live up to its potential, they realized that the boat should be better off used as a gunboat. And in the role of the gunboat, they were the best at what they did.
Yeah, you can see this one's really outfitted with some heavy duty armament.
Oh, you're looking at a 37 millimeter and a 20 millimeter on the bow, 40 millimeter single on the stern, racks for the newer improved torpedoes, 50 calibers, and of course the updated, SO radar dome. So she was ready to hunt at this point.
I'll say. This is a picture of the helm, which I think is kind of interesting. You see some of the instrumentation and the layout. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, this is inside the Elko building during one of the assembly processes, and here you'll see, just what the skipper saw and what he used to propel the boat and command the boat. Mm-hmm. And we see the 3 manifold pressure gauges in the center there, along with the tachometer, 3 tachometer gauges, because you had 3 engines. You'll see anchor light switches and signal horns and battle horns, and to the left, the far left, you see the 3 throttles for the engines that the skipper controlled. And on the top there, you'll also see 2 of the different compasses that were used for navigation.
Right. Okay. Well, we've only got another couple of minutes left, but I wanted to share some photos. This one's of the machine gun turrets.
Yeah, port side machine gun turret, a twin 50 caliber machine gun turret on a very late war Elko.
Mm-hmm. How about this?
Well, this is one of the earlier shots. This is the tube-mounted torpedoes, and they were steel welded tubes when we carried the Mach 8 torpedo. And this is what we were talking about earlier, how they were propelled with a black powder charge, and then they would shoot out of the tube toward their target. This man right here is cranking out the torpedo into the firing position in this photo. Mm-hmm. Another great shot here showing the torpedo. You can see on the back of the torpedo is the torpedo charge, where they would load the charge. And right there, you'll actually can see a silver point, a silver button. Yeah, when they electronically fired the torpedo, if it didn't fire, the torpedo man hit that little button right there with a wooden mallet, which would then launch the torpedo.
All right.
Another great shot. Yeah, the 2 torpedoes, the Mach 8 torpedoes. We're looking at the stern of this PT boat as she moves along.
Yes.
And then, of course, my favorite in the whole world, the final design, which was the Elko 80-footer, a completely different design from the 70 and 77 footers, a much better riding boat, much more room, much more place to put guns and weapons. And as you can see, just her lines are absolutely beautiful. She really was, to me anyway, the Corvette of the boats.
Yes, I agree completely. That's just a beautiful shape, and it's a beautiful shot, and it shows how well balanced it is. It's moving through the water with minimal wake. They turned around, a boat like this, and of course she's only just really cruising along here, but at top speed, Paul, 2/3 of her hull were out of the water, and they did that the way it was designed, for less drag, more speed. Mm-hmm. Well, Frank, we've come to our end of our time here. It was great. A little snapshot of PT boats in terms of what they were supposed to do, the different manufacturers, dive into Elko, the different phases, 70, 77, 80, the different engines, the armament. So a nice sampling, help people understand what they were all about. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up the show today? Well, I'd like to thank you for having me. Anytime I get an opportunity to talk about PT boats or keep the PT boats in the forefront, I always felt that was my job, to educate those that didn't know much about the World War II service and the PT boats. I think it does an honor to those veterans that served during the war and what they did. And again, if anybody has any questions, they want to talk to me, I'll be glad to talk to anyone. Mm-hmm. All they need to do is just, they can email me at mosquitofleet@comcast.net. And I'd love to talk to you and answer your questions. And I like to hear from those who maybe had family that were on the boats during the war. Right. Well, thank you for joining me this morning. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me again. You're welcome. And thank you, Smart Boating viewers, for joining us. If you have questions or comments, or just want to see another show, visit us at smartboatingus.com. Thank you.